Let's start to talk about attainable, because affordable tends to mean those people, and I'm going to argue that all of us need attainable housing. We all live in attainable housing. So I think that's, to me, the biggest thing that's facing our industry is understand what that means for our community, what that means, you know, for anybody that's a manager, corporate owner, business owner. You should understand what kind of attainable housing you have for your employees. And so what does that mean in our community? What do we need? Because we know the biggest challenge facing Des Moines is we need bodies. 2% unemployment is a bad thing. We need bodies. And in order to do that, we need attainable housing.
So I think that one of the things in front of us is how do we come together as a region and be thoughtful about our regional housing market. We know that people make housing choices across the region. We know that it's easy to commute from one place to another within our region for where you live and where you work. And so how do we think about these issues as outside of jurisdictional boundaries, because it does cross city lines. And we need to figure out how we can balance supply and demand across the region, not just within one single city.
I would agree with Kris that the conversation is more than just affordable housing, that the conversation we have every day is about housing for all. And that includes affordable housing, but that's about choice for everybody in every piece of the market. The context that we're working in as a suburban community is that the context is sort of what I would call a monoculture of housing that is very similar, that continues and continues. It has its own inertia. But is that what we need? Is that the right suitable housing for everybody? That I think of myself as I live, and I purchased a great house, but it was an available house. So there are available houses in most pieces of the market, but that doesn't mean that they're the right house for everybody, and that's different than the affordable conversation at the other end of the spectrum.
I agree with I guess the new definition. We don't talk as much about affordable housing as we did before, but rather just talking about housing in general, because it really is on a continuum and really does make a difference as to the family or household we're talking about. But I think that there are really two big issues that are facing us right now, particularly in light of the workforce housing report that I know we'll talk about a little later. As I told my board, there are two V words. They're value and velocity. And so the first thing that we know is that the population is going to grow very quickly. And so the velocity of building in this region is going to have to be at a rate that is a lot higher than it's been in the past if we're going to meet that demand. And the second is value, which means we're going to have to be building the right product at the right price. And so we're going to have to know what those needs are for this population that's coming in.
From your various perches, I think you see a more macro view than I see. I'm more of a niche guy, and so I'll add to the conversation that there's 3 or 4 major neighborhood transformations that any developers or development services people would want to figure out. One is this move of DMU is going to radically transform the corridor that I'm most focused on right now, is the Ingersoll Grand Corridor. That's one. Our office is by Valley West Mall. Valley West Mall is struggling. There's plans to do that. Then there's a similar thing at Myrtle Hay Mall. And then you've just created a new neighborhood that's going to radically alter the center of gravity in downtown. So those of us who are developing kind of have to figure out what that means for our projects. And then something similar is kind of happening in the East Village. So I'd say I feel like my biggest challenge is to try and be a little bit prescient in one or more of these big sea changes.
From my perspective, from a residential real estate side of things, I see an ever-widening gap between something for a first-time home buyer that would be sort of $220,000 and below. There's a lot more inventory in the $325,000 and above than there is the other way. And new construction is focused on the higher end of things. And we really could use, with the millennial buyer who is very savvy and buying houses and renting rooms, I think that the $100,000 gap between a resale home, average price, and a new construction home is a big issue that faces our community today.